You. So hi, everybody. My name's Elizabeth. I'm a career advisor at the ICC, and I work specifically with engineering and physical science students, and so chemistry falls under that area. So I may have met with you, some of you, in appointments, and if I haven't, you are more than welcome to come see me in appointments, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do at the ICC, what appointments are. We'll go through resumes and internships, and then there will be time for questions, but it's pretty informal. There's not, that many people here. So I'll pause and say, like, do you have questions? And feel free to ask them. And then if some of you have a certain question or topic that you really want me to cover, you can feel free to add that in the chat and I'll make sure to add that in as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with some slides. Okay. Can you see that? Yeah, okay. So this is just an introduction. Here's the ICC. Here's my contact information. And now we'll move forward. So like I said, we're going to cover ICC services, job search, internship search. You can use the word job search if you're looking for a full-time job, or the word internship if that's more of what you're looking for, and resumes, interviews, and a little bit more just about career fairs and Handshake. Okay, so career development or career searching is not something that you do one time and then you're done. It's something that really goes on for most of your whole life. There's these different stages in this little wheel, and they're not linear. You don't have to start one way and then end up at the end. So it starts with self-exploration, thinking about what you're interested in, what are some of your skills. You probably have started with what major are you interested in? And then work research is really looking at what jobs or internships match up with that field. Experiential education refers to internships or work experiences, actually testing out your interests. Decision-making and job search skills is around getting your resumes ready, applying to internships and deciding which of those work for you. Career management is interviewing, salary negotiation, choosing which job you want. And they might start over again. You might be doing a job search, but also still researching what companies you want. You might accept your first job and be working already, and then still be exploring what you're interested in. So this just goes on for forever, but we are here to help you with each stage. So for advisors, I am here to help you as your advisor. We also have peer advisors who are students in engineering and physical sciences majors. And so I'll talk about what each of us covers, but a lot of times it's helpful for you to come see a fellow student. And I know you have your chemistry peer advisors even here in this meeting. So we have peers that cover career topics. And we tend to have another career advisor, and we're going to be hiring that person soon. So right now, it's just me. So for career advising, I mentioned you can come see me for an appointment, and our career advising appointments are 30 minutes, and you schedule that ahead of time using Handshake. Hopefully most of you know what Handshake is. I'll talk about how to use it, but all of you have a Handshake account. You just have to go in, activate it, and log in if you've never done it before. And the appointments, we can really cover any kind of job or career question you might have. But a lot of times we talk about career exploration or what can I do with my major? A lot of it is resume review. So we can look at your resume line by line and go over review or edits, things like that. Cover letter, same thing. And applying to internships, applying to jobs. We can also do practice interviews. So once you apply to jobs and you're getting some interview requests, we can do some practice for that. But really any kind of question that you might have. And then I mentioned our peer advisors. Those are 15 minutes as opposed to the 30-minute appointment. And it's drop-in. You don't need an appointment. You just come to our building, which is in South Hall. We're right near the Quad and the MU. So you just come over, 15-minute drop-in. And if you've never been to the ICC, that might be a good way to start. You can cover most of the same topics with our peer advisors. It's just a little shorter. So you can go over your resume, you can go over Handshake, how to look for internships, cover letter, and it might be good to do that with a peer first. And then once you get some feedback on your resume, then come to see me for a more detailed version. Maybe some of you have already done these things. And then we have another resume service called Document Review, which is online. You upload your resume or cover letter to our website, and we would do it asynchronously, and we would review it and give you feedback in the form of like comments and suggestions within 5 days. Usually it's quicker. So that's good if you need it right away, you don't have time for an appointment, you just need something quickly. There's a note here that it's open to Davis students and alumni. I should just make a note, all of our services are open to alumni within 1 year of graduation. So this service, but also everything I'm about to talk about, you can use within that 1 year after graduation. So some of these slides have links in them. So I'm happy to send the slides to you, and then all of you can click on the links and things like that after. Another resource is the Career Resource Manual. It's a physical book that we have in our office, but it's also a PDF on our website. So this is a little screenshot of like where it is on our website. But basically it's most of our career advice put into this book for you to take. But the biggest piece that's useful, I think, is sample resumes. So we have sample resumes from lots of different types of students. So we have like some business students, but we have a lot of research-based resumes, which might be useful for you. So students really use those, and there's sample cover letters also. So I think that's what students use the most, but there's also other things like a verb list that you might want to use for your resume when you're trying to think of how to write a bullet point. But there's resources about salary negotiation and all kinds of things, which is, again, if you can't come in for an appointment, you can just read some of this book. Workshops, we're essentially doing a workshop right now. It's just specific for you, but we do workshops every single week at the Career Center. Some of them are in person and some of them are virtual. Some of them are employers that come to campus and they want to do their own info session, but then a lot of them are just us, So we do resume one, interviews, cover letters, find a job or internship. I'm actually doing that workshop on Monday. We have often like how to get a state job or federal job, because that's a pretty involved, like different process. Health related internship is also a special type of internship that we offer as like a program that we run, and it's actually open right now. I don't know if any of you are interested in a health career, and you may have heard about this program. We abbreviate to HRI. So that's open right now, and we do workshops around that, and we send a lot of emails around that. So if you have more questions, that might be a good Q&A topic. So we'll talk a little bit about Handshake. Like I said, most of you probably know Handshake a little bit. It's a website and an app version, and this is really our platform to search for jobs and internships. There's certainly other places, like we'll have an example of LinkedIn and other job boards, but this is our UC Davis way. You also would use this to schedule your career appointment with us. But there's also events in Handshake. There's like a tab for events. The biggest event that we have in Handshake is our career fair, but you'll also see other events in here. Sometimes there are events that are separate from campus. It'll be like a company just wants to host an info session or something. This is an outdated screenshot of Handshake, but it's still worth noting. The notifications, I think the default is that it just provides every single notification ever. And so this might look familiar if you've gone on your own Handshake. There's a bunch of these red dots of notification, and you may get a lot of emails from Handshake, and then you kind of just disregard them because you're like, oh, this is just Handshake again. So these arrows are kind of indicating where the notifications are. And especially this one is like edit notification preferences. So I would change it. It depends on what you want to get, but I would assume you may not want an email every single time. So you can set it to be like, I only want an email about an interview or about a career appointment. You can also set it to be like, if you have the app, that it would show up there. The little like red dot in the corner by your name is another place where they show up. So this is just a note, like it has a lot of notifications, and I'd recommend editing the way they show up for you. Career fairs is another thing we offer. And like I said, it's the biggest event that we have in Handshake. We have an engineering and technology career fair coming up in January. Did any of you go to the career fair that we had in October? I don't know, you can put in the chat or like do a thumbs up or something. I guess I should look at the chat. Yeah, somebody did. Okay, great. That was our first in-person career fair for like over 2 years. If you went, you probably experienced it being very crowded. This picture is actually from the October fair. So you can see it's crowded. The engineering fair that's coming up, it's not just engineering. So it's all types of, I would say, STEM in general. So you probably would find employers that are looking for chemistry, chemical engineering, lab positions. And if you feel like, oh, I'm not sure if an employer is going to be relevant for me, about 2 or 3 weeks before the fair, on Handshake, there will be a list of every company attending, and you can look at what majors are they hiring for. And are they hiring for internships or full-time jobs or both? And so right now, we just know that it's engineering technology fair, and this is the date and the time. And on this slide, you can also see the winter fair. The winter fair is just like the fall one that we had. It's just like kind of general for any major or career. So in general, for both of them, a few weeks before the fair, you can really navigate Handshake and look at who's attending, who are they hiring for, what kinds of positions. Something that a lot of students get confused about is the type of company. So let's say it's, I don't know, a civil engineering company that's like a construction-based company. A lot of students be like, oh, I'm not a civil engineer, so I shouldn't even go talk to them. But they might be hiring for a role that's different. Like maybe they're hiring for human resources or a computer science tech role. So that's where don't just think about what company it is, but also think about what kind of role it is. So you can find that out on Handshake before the fair, and then come up with a list of like, these are the companies I want to talk to when I go to the fair. And there will be a map of where the booths are. So if you have a list of like, these are the companies, then you can find out what booths are they at and how to navigate when you walk around that crowded space. And there's a little video that we have a link to if you did not go to the fair, of like a preview of walking through and what it looks like. Any questions about things that we've covered or about the career fair? I'll just pause for a little bit. You can put in the chat, you can raise your hand. Okay, maybe not. If you're like in the middle of typing something in the chat, I'm going to move on and then I'll notice it in a minute. Okay. Oh, so this is still about the career fair in a way. Sometimes students are nervous to go to the career fair. That's very normal. You might go up to an employer at their booth and feel like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to introduce myself. So we call this sort of an elevator pitch. How to introduce yourself in a professional way to an employer or to a professor in their office hours, maybe. So this is sort of a little script that you can use. You can obviously change it however you want. But basically just saying your name, your major, what you're in school, and kind of indicating I'm interested in this internship, what kind of topic, and then maybe giving an example of something you've done before. So this says your relevant experience or your relevant skills. Even if you've never had an internship, you can just mention something you've done, maybe from a class or from a club or something like that. And then make it clear, like, is it an internship that you want? Is it a full-time job? So you can look through this and then just practice saying your version over and over and over again. Practice with a friend or go see a peer advisor and practice with them. So this is just a little way to prepare before the career fair comes. So that's kind of like overview of the ICC. overview of the fair and handshake. I guess this would have been the best place to do a pause. But now we're going to start talking about resumes. So if you had a question that you were trying to type, you can still feel free to type that. But I'll go ahead and start talking about resumes. How long do you think an employer spends when they're looking at your resume, when they get that in the job posting? You can put your thought in the chat for this, or you can just say it out loud. 10 minutes, 30 seconds. Oh, it appeared before I meant to click on it, but I saw somebody in the chat say 10 minutes and somebody said 30 seconds. And you are correct, it is about 30 seconds. That just appeared, honestly, on its own. So really what they are doing when they receive your resume is skimming it. They're just glancing through, looking to see basic things like, what is your degree in? What are some of your experiences? They're skimming over. They will go back and read it more carefully at a later point. But what this means is you have to make things easy to read and very clear on your resume. So we'll talk about like what to include, but this is just an initial thought of like, make things easy for the reader. And if they're only looking at it for a few seconds, what do you want them to see first? So here we're going to look at like two sides. On the left side, here's what you kind of need to include in your resume: your name and contact information. That's easy. You already know that information. Education is quite important. You want to say that you're a student at UC Davis, your major is chemistry, or like one of the various chemistry majors. And when do you graduate? That's important. And then some form of experience. And I'm not saying that's a paid job. It's just something that you've done before. So it's a very basic outline, those three categories. You're probably going to have other categories though. So the other side is optional. These are all optional things. You could have an objective, which would go at the top. You could have a skills section, projects, related courses. I highlighted those because those are quite common for STEM students to include. You could also have leadership or clubs, community service, presentations, research is down at the bottom. That's also quite common. These are all things that you can add in, and they also could count as part of your experience section. So it's really kind of up to you and up to your own experiences themselves of what makes sense to add. So we'll look at some example versions. Okay, so we're going to look at somebody's actual resume, not a real one, like we made this up, but this one here on the left, I know it's small. This is somebody that used a template to create their resume from Google Docs. My guess is some of you on your own resume may have used this exact same template or another Google Doc template. This is not a bad resume. This is okay. If we look closely in experience, they have worked at In-N-Out Burger, Genentech in research experience, and then they volunteered at SPCA. Then they have their education kind of in the middle of the page. And then they have a project down there. And then over on the other column, they have a lot of skills, a lot of lab skills actually, and then some activities, and then some languages, which they only included English. This is not a horrible resume, but it is a little confusing. So we're going to show you the exact same person's resume without the template. Over here, it's just one column all the way down, the whole width of the page. Their education is first, which I think is important. And they showed a little more detail. They showed their classes. They put some skills, or they actually had the skills before. Their project and their research is first. So it's easier to kind of see those related pieces. And then they have their other experience kind of down there with their additional experience. So they split things into categories. A lot of people use the template, but we would overall recommend not using a template and just creating your own document. So I know this is a little bit small on the screen. We have the example in our career resource manual as well. And we have lots of examples. So if you don't like this particular one, we have a lot of other versions as well. The other difference is this person is using bullet points to like break up their topics, whereas in the other one, they aren't. And with the bullet points, they're actually adding a lot more detail about the projects or the experience. Any questions about this part so far? Have any of you actually used this exact template? You don't have to say if it is you. It's not bad, like I said. Okay, so for experience, these are just some examples, and I think you can read these like bullet points a little bit if you want. The concept here is you can group things however you want. And so I pointed out the other person actually had something very similar to this: research, projects, and then other work experience. You could just have one title called experience and put everything in there. But by creating these smaller categories, it kind of highlights each thing. And for the reader, it makes it clear, oh, you've done research. Versus like if these were all together in one, the reader has to kind of determine that themselves. And then within, if they had multiple research experiences, they would put the most recent thing first and then the older thing later. There's only one thing in each category here, so the dates don't really make a difference. But overall, we would say reverse chronological order. So that means recent first, older at the bottom. And like I said, I can send these slides so you can read all the bullet points a little bit more closely. But I'll just leave it there for another second so you can look. And in both examples, I just want to emphasize, it is okay to have something that you may consider unrelated. Both of these people have like a restaurant experience, and it's still worth putting on your resume. Even if it's not chemistry, even if it's not lab experience, it's still good to show. So a lot of you may have projects or lab experience from your classes. This particular example are from engineering examples, but you may know on your own which are more accurate for you. So this could be its own section. It could go under experience. You personally may not even put anything in this category or need this category. This is sort of just an option. But if you do have research or lab or projects that you want to put, this is kind of a good way to format it, just like your other experiences, where you put a title, where it was, the dates, and then some bullet points describing what you did in that project. If it's a group project, that's good to mention too. Like this person said, worked with a team of 4 to research, blah, blah, blah. This person also said presented this in the design showcase. So if you've done something like that as part of even a class project, like in the final result, if you did a poster presentation or a paper, you can always mention that. So projects, if it applies, great. If it's lab experience or research experience, that can be its own group too. So I mentioned like how to describe things in bullet points, and we looked at some of the bullet points. We call them accomplishment statements at the ICC, and I'll show you kind of what that is. So we would start with a verb, and a lot of the ones we just looked at actually were doing this. I just didn't describe it to you yet. So start with a verb, and you can come up with these verbs from the job descriptions that you look at or from our career manual. We have a whole list of verbs. And then you want to provide some context about like, what were you doing or what setting was this in? If you're talking about research, it could be like, what topic are you actually researching? And then some kind of result. So like I was saying, like, what is the final outcome of your research or your presentation? If you have numbers, you can always kind of quantify and put that. But basically, like, because of your actions in this internship or whatever, what was able to be accomplished or what happened because of you doing it. So this is sort of a formula, and we'll look at an example. So we'll look at like a basic bullet point. Okay, here's one. This is an engineering-based example. Manage semiconductor process. That's okay. I kind of know what they're talking about. We're going to make it the accomplishment version. It's going to get way longer. Accomplishment statements are long. Okay, it's much longer. And they're highlighted. So like this bold is the verb, the underlined is the context, and the end is the result. So managed upstream strategies of semiconductor processes by coordinating production to deposition timings, increasing manufacturing efficiency by 120%. So after reading this type of one, we have a lot more information about what this person actually did. I'll show you one or two other examples. And then like you can think about your own resume. And if you probably have some versions of these first bullet points, you can think about how might you convert them to the second version. Wrote final report. A lot of you have done that. A lot of you have written a final report. So this one doesn't give us a whole lot of information. So this new one, presented findings on a novel plastic additive process to an audience of 50 attendees and submitted research conclusions to an undergraduate research journal. So this is a lot more. So again, many of you have written a final report. Maybe you haven't done all of this second thing, but it's just showing how to give more context and more information. I have one more example. Helped manage a budget for an engineering project in Kenya. I think this is from a club, but many of you have probably worked with a budget or been in a club. So this is still probably good. Like they gave us an engineering project. They gave us what kind of project it was. But now we have more. Collaborate with 20 multidisciplinary engineers to manage the team budget for an ongoing project and to construct 8 boreholes for clean water in the Kenyan community of 3,500. So this is a lot more information, and we clearly understand like what this person was doing. So number one, these are longer for sure. They have more information and they are harder to write. So you can go to your own resume and start to brainstorm, how can I convert my shorter bullet points to this longer format or this format that has more information? And you may struggle at that point. So if you start like thinking about this or brainstorming this, that's where you may want to come to the Career Center and have one of our peer advisors help you or have an appointment with me to start even brainstorming the initial bullet point, the first bullet point, or converting the bullet point to the longer version. This is kind of a complicated process. Even just this slide, I think, is a complicated concept. Do you guys have any questions about this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Benjamin.
So, what if your work didn't have any conclusions? Could you write down what it was meant to do instead?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, yes, you can. When you say meant to do, I think the issue may come up of conveying that you meant to do something and did not do it. So you don't want to show like, I kind of did it, but I didn't achieve what I was supposed to achieve. So it depends on how you write it. I think there's a way to write it that explains what you're trying to say. There's also sometimes where you just don't have a result. Like we made up these examples. So you might not have it. And in most positions, you're going to have more than one bullet point. Not every single bullet point is going to look like this. So there may be one that you're talking about research, and you might want to describe the setup of the experiment, or you designed this process of the experiment. And the result might be it led to you doing steps of the experiment. Maybe it didn't lead to the result of the whole experiment that you wanted, but there's probably a way to describe it of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a different way to phrase it.
And that's something that we often help with in looking at resumes with students, is like, how can we phrase this a little differently? So it's good if you come see us and bring a draft of your resume. Okay, we'll go to the next. Okay, so that's kind of it for resumes. And now we'll talk about like internships or jobs, like if you're looking for your full-time job now, or if you're looking for internships, the process will be similar. So like I talked about at the beginning with that kind of self-exploration, kind of identifying your own interests, your values, your skills. What are you looking for? And then also the job market of what kinds of positions or what kinds of internships match up with that field. And that will help you before you start to actually apply. So we talked about experience section on your resume. It's important to get some experience outside of just your class. So if you're not yet looking for the full-time job, if you're a sophomore, junior, even a freshman, you want to think about at the end of all your time, you're searching for that full-time career position. And you want to set yourself up now to gain some of those skills. And it's not just a paid position that you need. You can use an internship. You can use a student job, like on-campus job. Like I said, projects. It could be volunteering. Campus organizations and clubs are definitely a way. So some of this I talked about when we were talking about resumes, but these are just things to think about to help you gain the skills that those jobs in the future might be looking for. And you can even look at job postings for those full-time jobs to see what are those requirements that they're looking for. And then think backwards, like how can I get those skills now? So that's another way to kind of look. So you want to do multiple things. Job boards are basically Handshake, LinkedIn, things like that. Targeting company web pages is going onto their website and looking right on their site to see how to apply. Networking is meeting people in the field, talking to people that have this job already, learning their suggestions. And then self-developing an internship is sort of through networking, contacting different places you may want to work for an internship and basically asking if you could work there. And sometimes that leads to a position. It's often unpaid because you're basically saying like, can I be here? But that is an option. So job boards, Handshake, LinkedIn is kind of one of the easier ways because the jobs are already posted and you just go and look at those. A lot of people are doing that though. So there is more competition for some of those jobs. And not every company is posting on there. Sometimes companies actually have to pay to post on LinkedIn or Handshake or Indeed. Handshake, we don't really charge. Handshake has an advantage that they are generally looking for college students. So you won't usually see jobs with like tons of experience required. Sometimes Handshake does have graduate positions. So you might be looking for an internship and then all of a sudden it requires a master's degree. But LinkedIn or Indeed or other job boards may not have as many entry-level jobs or internships. So you can certainly use job boards, and I think you should, but those are just some things to like keep in mind. And then some samples of various, oh, sorry, there's too many clicks. Oh, I didn't realize how many times I'd have to click. Okay, we're gonna give some samples of various job boards. And some of these are sort of like industry specific. There are probably chemistry specific ones. And a lot of times you can learn about them through professional organizations. I'm not sure what the chemistry organization is called. Maybe you guys do, but there's usually like, sometimes there's a student version and a professional version. They may have their own job board, but here are just some general ones. And then there's some state ones like we mentioned. Okay, so for Handshake, a lot of you know Handshake, but there are paid and unpaid jobs. There's on-campus jobs, and off-campus, and there's internships and, career jobs. There's this little code right here in the middle that I wanted to point out. If you're looking for an on-campus job, there's a button for on-campus, which is easy. But there's also this code. It's an abbreviation of the word student, STDT. You can type that into Handshake and all the on-campus jobs will come up. So it's another strategy for looking for on-campus jobs. And then just another Handshake tip is the more you put into Handshake as information about you, it uses kind of like AI to show you more accurate results of what it thinks you're going to be interested in. Targeting company web pages is maybe self-explanatory, but some companies only post their jobs on their own websites. So you may want to think about or research what companies might be of interest to you, and then go right to their page. When you're on a company's website, these are some of the terms that they might have on their sections. So it might be a section called careers. There might be a section called about us. And in those sections is where the careers are usually posted. Oh, thank you, Perry, in the chat. American Chemical Society. Oh yeah, one of the majors is called ACS chemistry, right? Networking, I mentioned. Networking is complicated. And we have workshops just on networking, but basically it doesn't have to be that hard. It's just thinking about, is there someone in this field that I could talk to? And it could be starting with, in the chemistry department, is there a grad student? Is there a TA? Is there a professor? And once you learn a little bit from that person, you can ask them, do you know someone else that I could talk to that you could connect me with? And so meeting one or two people and then connecting from there to other people can be really helpful. You may have a friend at Davis who had an internship at a company, and you can ask them, tell me about your internship. Could you introduce me to someone at that company? So just kind of think about, is there anyone in your network at all to start with? And if there's not, you can use LinkedIn to find strangers. And it's totally okay to reach out to somebody and say like, oh, I see you're a UC Davis alumni from a chemistry major. I would love to learn about your career. Can we do some messages? And that's really totally okay. And people love to talk about their career. You can also meet people at career fairs. That's one of the reasons we have career fairs. So this is just a little info about networking, but like I said, we have workshops just about networking as well. And then when you apply for an internship or job, really review the job descriptions. And kind of like I was saying, you can be doing this when you are applying to an internship, or you can be doing this for a future job just to learn about what does a job in chemistry look like so that I can learn what I need to do for the future. But really like look for the keywords, look at the qualifications, and really read through all of the sections so you fully understand what they're looking for. And then work on your resume or cover letter so that it matches those keywords or key skills. And save a copy of that job description. Sometimes, or most of the time, it will disappear from their website once the job is closed. So if you're going to have an interview later, you probably want to review the job description before your interview. And sometimes you can't find it online afterwards. So it's good to just download and save the job description of any job you apply to. So that's like the primary topics that I wanted to cover. I just want to point out some extra resources at the end. We talked about the career resource manual, which is most of all of our career advice. We have an extensive YouTube for the ICC, and we have it set up with playlists. So there's like a resume playlist, and most of the videos are like 3 or 4 minutes long. We have a networking playlist where it talks about like how to look through LinkedIn, how to reach out to someone, cover letter playlist. We have playlists for like every topic. The weekly email newsletter. I know you have a great email newsletter that Perry sends out. We have one from the ICC, and they go by topics. So we have one that's engineering and physical science. If you're interested in learning about a different topic, you can subscribe to all of them. And then we'll put events that we have, career fair info, and then we always put a list of internships and jobs. And they're pretty varied. So they're not always going to be chemistry. There's going to have a mix of engineering types, computer science types, and then some chemistry, some lab positions. And then our website is here and our Instagram is there. So these are just some resources to have. And then just our contact info. So I know we have a little more time, and I just wanted to leave time for Q&A. Thanks for paying attention.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share.